things I also like about both your stories is that have, as you mentioned in the presentation before, strong female characters, and some of them are quite different than the stereotype. And I can, for example, think of Leiflin, the mother, who I thought it was a lot like Cersei in certain ways, and the mother Gundry.
Yeah.
It was a present throughout the story, even though she wasn't there, but she was. And in the case of the throne, of course, Litaz and Zamia, this wonderful character that can become is a shapeshifter and a lion, and it's also very important in the plot. So I would like you to comment on why did you choose to make those female characters like that? What did you want to achieve?
Well, for me, you know, as I was saying in the earlier presentation here at the festival, that's an archetype, the kind of woman warrior archetype, you know, Xena, or you know, whatever, the warrior princess archetype, right? This woman who can beat up any man around her. Also in a lot of martial arts movies, which actually martial arts films are kind of a big influence on the action side of this novel, right? That kind of kick-butt woman character is a staple, and it was inevitable that one of those types was going to end up in my book. In my particular instance, though, having that kind of character also served an important purpose that is part of kind of the whole ethos of what I'm doing with this book, which is to kind of dismantle stereotypes that exist in the West about Arabs and about Islam, and with the figure of Zamia, in particular, stereotypes about Arab women, right, and about what the role of Arab women is and how they conduct themselves, and so I just had the most kick-ass character in the book, the character who can literally tear bad guys to shreds, is going to be this teen Arab girl, right, and that was almost wired in there from the beginning. I had these couple of characters that I knew were going to be in there from the beginning, and she was one of them. Now, in the case of, there's also a prominent older woman character, Litaz, who is an alchemist of sorts, and she really is in there because, well, she came out of the story, but when I look back and kind of analyze what I was doing, which I wasn't necessarily thinking about consciously at the time, you know, she's in there as the kind of scientist figure in the novel. She's the most rationalist of any of the characters, and she's in that role partially, I came to realize, as a kind of counterpoint to the notion of kind of the female characters as the emotional sounding board for the novel, the embodiment of the novel's heart rather than its brain, if that makes sense. And so having the character who kind of coldly measures everything and reduces everything around her to a mathematical formula, I think is much more powerful if it's a woman, because we're not really used to thinking of women as that sort of figure. So she's, if anything, she's the book's Mr. Spock, right? And I think that there's something interesting that happens when you put a woman in that role rather than a man. So.
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote the first lore, I almost without thinking about it reached for a very classic patriarchal, faux medieval sort of epic fantasy society, and most of my characters were men. I was mining male archetypes, I guess, like the wizard and the boy who would be king and the man of violence, those kind of things, and I made them male characters. And I realised over time that I'd not done too well in terms of the female characters, and in terms generally of just having women present in the story, even in the background. So when I came to write In a New World, I was quite keen that there should be some mechanics within that world that would very easily allow me to get a lot of women into the story without...
Smile, for example.
Exactly, yeah. And so I kind of hit on this idea of having the warrior sphere and the sphere of work and war really being the male areas of control, but that women had always been given responsibility for the household and wear the key of their household around their neck. And then the household has kind of grown and has become the whole area of property and money and currency. And the queen is responsible for her husband's property, and that means she's responsible for the money of the kingdom. She's become the chancellor and the great merchant. So merchants and ship's captains are often female. A lot of crafts people are female also, who've taken on their husband's businesses, things like this. So Half King has a lot of varied, and I wanted there to be many types of different women in the story if I could. I'd done kind of some quite male women before, some badass women if you like, which is great, and I love those kind, but I wanted as much variety as I could. So in this story really is happening at a time when money is becoming more and more important, as it was in the Viking world. As the Vikings expanded into Asia, they brought a lot of silver home. And I wanted, therefore, female power and the power over money to be becoming very, much more powerful, and almost unbalancing the nature of the culture. And forces acting against that are almost what sets the story in motion. So you have Laithlin, who is the mother of the main character, who is quite a cold, calculating, very cunning merchant, really, a banker, really, who is becoming very powerful by virtue of her innovation in money. You also have a ship's captain who becomes very important over the life of the main character.
I cannot pronounce the name.
Shadik Shiram. So she's a very dangerous and quite physically powerful woman. Then there's also Sumail, who's a navigator and is very valued and effective and important because of her ability to read the stars and find her way from one place to another, which is quite a key and limited skill. So I really was keen to get just as much variety as possible. The next book then has, again, a different range of women, and as a woman in the central role this time, a girl who's very keen to kind of impose herself on the male sphere and become a warrior. So I was interested from the start in making sure this time around I got a good range of women in there.